Welcome to the Calm Analytics channel. I'm Boris Tizengozin. Today is August 9th. The main news at this moment. Several major military facilities were destroyed near Putin's palace in Gelendzhik. Let's go through everything in order. Today, the commander of the unmanned systems forces with the call sign Madhyar wrote the following. We finally reached the position of the S-400 anti-aircraft missile system in Gelendzhik. It was from this position that 6 missiles were launched on August 8th. The S-400 position in Gelendzhik on the coast, right next to the catacombs, was burning and detonating for about 3 hours, wrote Madhyar. Furthermore, that night 4 other important air defense elements were destroyed on Russian territory, and there will be more on that as well. So, this S-400 position is not simple, as they say. It's not just one vehicle, but a complex consisting of launchers, radar, a command post, and support vehicles. And the most important point here is that the position was burning and detonating for about 3 hours, which suggests that, with a high degree of probability, several vehicles from this division were damaged, not just the launchers. When S-400 missiles detonate, the explosion and shrapnel cover the entire position. The Russians took a hit of about 500 million in Gelendzhik. But the point here isn't even the money, but rather the fact that the launchers and radar systems, which had been hunted for a long time, were destroyed. And another very interesting point. It is only 23 kilometers from the destroyed S-400 position to the Cape and to Kopas, where Putin's palace is located. Putin hasn't visited his palace in Gelendzhik for a long time, nor his other residences in the Krasnodar territory either. He is very afraid of drones and missiles, and apparently not without reason. Can you imagine how frustrating that is for him? I mean, there in Gelendzhik there is a brand new palace. The main building alone is 18,000 square meters, with its own access to the sea, an elevator port infrastructure, a church, a theater, a swimming pool, vineyards, a winery, and of course a network of underground tunnels and a bunker so that the brave underground commander-in-chief could move around there on a trolley and not be afraid of anything. I mean, all of this, its own theater, a church, a Botox injection room, underground playrooms for the Kabayev's children, and now all of this is inaccessible. Of course, there is a reason to hate Ukraine and Ukrainians. And one more important point. The S-400 that was destroyed is a zonal air defense system designed to cover a fairly large area and several important facilities. The short distance from this position to Putin's palace allows us to say that this division was covering, among other things, Putin's palace. Thus, it turns out that Ukrainian drones simply wiped out one of the most important elements of protection for Putin's lair. It's a shame, of course, for the bald mackerel, and now it's probably scary to even set foot there at all. But that's not all. Several more air defense elements of the Russian Federation have been destroyed and hit. A Torsam system in the Rostov region, a Pantsir S-1 gun missile system was taken out in Yeysk, Krasnodar Krai, a Podlet K-1 radar also in the Rostov region, and a Kasta 2E2 radar also in the Rostov region. And that's another 115 million down. So, in total, including the S-400 position, that's minus 600 million. But I repeat, the importance here lies specifically in the equipment. But that's not all. There, not far from Putin's residence, another crucial facility was destroyed. More on that a little later. But for now, let me remind you, friends, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. It's important. You can do it right now without delay. We are fighting against Putin's propaganda, and together we will be much more effective at doing so. So be sure to subscribe. And by the way, today is the birthday of the commander of the Unmanned Systems Forces of Ukraine, Robert Brovdy, with the call sign Madhyar. I sincerely congratulate Madhyar, wishing him good health and strength to continue burning the occupiers just as effectively, selflessly, and creatively. Happy birthday. Medvedev crawled out of his hole and predicted a massive crisis or something worse for Armenia. How mysterious of him. Do you know why? Because of the break with Russia. Well, everything is clear here. Let me quote. In the event of a break in economic relations with Russia, Armenia faces a serious decline or even more severe consequences, Medvedev stated. The European Union and the USA absolutely do not care about the well-being of the citizens of this country. And Medvedev is the only one who does care. As soon as Armenia ceases to be of interest to them as a battering ram against Russia, the Western weather vanes will instantly abandon all their promises, as if they never existed at all. At the same time, an economic break with our country will cause a deep internal crisis in Armenia, and perhaps something even worse, declared the ambassador of the tincture of swallowing. And what could be worse than being under the protectorate of such a degenerate neighbor? These proponents of the Russian world are certainly amazing characters. They give advice to everyone around them on how to live properly, who to be friends with, and how to conduct their politics. They can't even put their own country in order, yet they give advice to everyone else. First, get your own people out of the garlic and vodka-soaked slums of the deep provinces. Make sure your pensioners aren't rummaging through trash bins, and then you can start giving advice. And I would, of course, like to remind Medvedev, that red-faced villain from the Sizran Youth Theater, that when neither Moscow nor the Moscow Principality nor a state called the Russian Federation existed on the territory of modern Russia, Armenian statehood was already over 1,000 years old. That is, Moscow is first mentioned about 1,300 years after the emergence of Greater Armenia and about 1,700 years after the appearance of early Armenian statehood. So who are you croaking at from under your log, Medvedev? Well, how would they know? After all, their entire history is built on the idea that apart from Russia, no other states existed. And everything that exists in the world besides Russia, that means it was either created by Lenin or Stalin and gifted to someone at some point. Medvedev has really been going off lately. You've noticed, right? He has a post every single day. Apparently, some Kremlin guard in the courtyard tossed one extra little bottle of vodka into his kennel yesterday, and off he went. And another major piece of news, which caused such a howling in the swamps that it can be heard all the way over here. Ukraine is buying 70 M39 ATAK-MS ballistic missiles from Turkey, along with 12 M270 multiple launch rocket systems. Oh, and the package also includes 2,500 unguided 227mm M26 rockets with cluster warheads and 47,000 M509A1 cluster artillery shells. And of course, such a howl went up in the Russian Federation. How could this be? You're selling ballistics to Ukraine, and American ones at that. Well, there are a few important points here. Well, first of all, what are the permissions for these ballistics? Where can we strike? And it's always important to verify information. You know, I do this constantly. And here the pedant enters the chat. First of all, Ukraine has not yet received these 70 ATAK-MS missiles. On August 3rd, the State Department notified Congress of its intention to authorize Turkey to permanently re-export American weapons to Ukraine. This notification was officially published on August 6th. This means that American regulations require Washington's permission for the transfer of weapons to a third party. That is, Turkey must obtain consent from the US, from Congress to carry out this deal so that Ukraine can buy these munitions. And here it is necessary to remember that all American weapons are also subject to end-use monitoring. So if Congress, and what is the mechanism there? That is, if no objections arise in Congress within 15 days, then the deal is considered approved, and Turkey sells these munitions to Ukraine. But furthermore, all American weapons are subject to end-use monitoring. Meaning, you can't just buy this ballistics from Turkey or directly from the US and strike wherever we want. No, furthermore, it is mandatory to coordinate all targets with the US. So that's the mechanism. What kind of weapon is it? It's an early ATACMS, the so-called Block I, with a range of approximately 165 kilometers. That's quite enough for Ukraine. We'll find something to hit. But I repeat, the deal needs to go through, congressional approval is required, and then a list of targets still needs to be approved. But judging by the composition of this package, and the fact that it includes a large number of cluster munitions, the package looks precisely like a kit for disrupting the concentration and deployment of a large grouping before an offensive that is naturally a Russian grouping. Well, and Ukraine is performing an incredible feat, and in every episode we have an important fundraiser for the defense forces of Ukraine. Today we are continuing our fundraiser for EcoFlow charging stations for the favorite unmanned systems battalion of the 107th Brigade. The battalion is carrying out combat missions in the Pokrovsk direction near Dobropilya, one of the hottest directions right now. The soldiers have recorded a video message for you. Please take a look.
Ми, військовослужбовці 2-го батальйону безпілотних систем «Фаворит», виконуємо бойові завдання по знищенню ворога на Покровському напрямку та в районі Добропілля. Звертаємось до Бориса Тисенгаузена та спільноти каналу Бориса з проханням допомогти закрити збір на придбання зарядних станцій для АКБ ударних дронів. Слава Україні! Героям слава!
Let's help our warriors from the 107th Brigade. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. There is mono, private, and PayPal for those who want to help from abroad. And unfortunately, we cannot post videos of the combat work of the favorite unmanned systems battalion here. But if you find them on Instagram or Telegram, you will see a bunch of videos there of how our warriors are mercilessly burning out the occupiers and their equipment. And the QR code in the corner is for those who are watching me on other channels. It also always leads to the fundraiser. In every episode, I say a special thank you to you from myself and from the hundreds of our warriors whom we have already helped. Thank you so much. By the way, the day before, the Turkish foreign minister made a very telling statement. Russia may use nuclear weapons if it finds itself in a hopeless situation. This was stated by the head of the Turkish foreign ministry, Hakan Fidan. According to him, if the war of attrition, which is what is happening right now, finally spills over from the front to the Russian rear, and the situation for Moscow becomes existential, the Kremlin may resort to the last option. Well, and Fidan noted that he had discussed this topic with both the Russian and Western sides. You know, the very fact of such a statement is important here, that the very, very well-informed Turkish foreign minister admits that the war will finally spill over into the rear of the Russian Federation and cause truly catastrophic damage that Moscow will not be able to cope with. I mean, 2 or 3 years ago, after such words, Russian propagandists would have laughed in your face. Like, what are you talking about? What war in the rear? An existential one. That can't be. But now you see they aren't laughing anymore. It's not funny to them, and such a scenario is being seriously considered. And that's even before ballistic missiles have started flying into the territory of the Russian Federation. Well, Turkey, by the way, is meanwhile pushing its own interests quite seriously. That is, Turkey has restricted the movement of vessels heading to Novorossiysk through the Dardanelles Strait following drone attacks in the Black Sea. In other words, the Turkish General Directorate of Coastal Safety has stopped issuing transit permits for ships bound for Novorossiysk. Bloomberg sources report that the restrictions also apply to ships heading to Ukraine. Previously, the Turkish Foreign Ministry called on Russia and Ukraine to take concrete steps to ensure the safety of navigation in the Black Sea. In other words, Ankara is not officially declaring a blockade or closing the straits, but is turning the permit procedure into a bureaucratic drag, and so it becomes a tool of pressure, an implicit way of exerting pressure, both on the Russian Federation and on Ukraine. That is, you know, at the end of the day, business is business, as Erdogan tells us. And now, for the cherry on top, which I mentioned right at the beginning of this episode. I have to ask, what other important facility was destroyed in Gelendzhik, not too far from Putin's palace? It is a question that really makes you wonder about what is actually going on behind the scenes. This important facility is commonly referred to as a Super EW, a Super Electronic Warfare System. It was destroyed on August 7th, right next to an S-400 position, but it only became known now. So what is this Super EW system called Vulna Garant? So the Vulna Garant electronic warfare system is designed specifically to jam Starlink satellite communications. That is, it operates within a specific frequency range. It consists of several such containers at once. It operates in a specific range, creating a powerful narrow beam interference directed upwards towards specific Starlink satellites, so that the satellite, well, figuratively speaking, hears the rather weak signal from the terminal on the ground, or in our case, on a Ukrainian drone, less clearly. So, in essence, they are blinding Elon Musk's satellite so that it doesn't transmit a signal to the terminal on the drone. One set is quite large, with 6 trailers, each containing 2 parabolic antennas. That's a total of 12 antenna modules. So, one such complex is capable of covering about 20 square kilometers. The system is produced in occupied Crimea in Simferopol. I think that soon by the black or white smoke, we will find out where the system is actually being produced. The most important thing is where it's being assembled. This is already the 3rd instance of the destruction of this tsar EW that has been documented in open sources. The most interesting thing, why this is the cherry, I don't know, the apple, the watermelon, the pumpkin on the cake, is because this complex was destroyed just 500 meters from the point where the S-400 position, which was covering Putin's palace, detonated. And this complex itself was located on the territory of an FSB training center in Gelendzhik. It's right on the shore, on Rybatskaya Strait. So it turns out that this complex was covering about 20 square kilometers, that is 4 by 5, and it was covering this very FSB center and the S-400 position that our drones took out. It turns out that both the one who was covering and the one that was being covered were taken out. That's the kind of two-move play that resulted. On August 7th, they destroyed the Vulna Garant at the FSB facility, and on August 8th, they destroyed the S-400 position itself, which this Vulna Garant, well, the candy pencil, was covering. The training center that the Vulna Garant was covering is still there for now. No, but seriously, who came up with the name Vulna Garant? It's like some little parrot pulling out random words. Pulled out 3 random words: wave, dome, guarantor. Another piece of news in the context of Putin constantly yapping about a buffer zone. Explosions in Belgorod. Drones attacked the FSB building and a thermal power plant. The attack was one of the most massive in recent times. Russian air defense was shooting down drones today in a particularly clumsy way, right over Belgorod, over residential buildings. Local residents are in shock. I came across a screenshot of one of the local posts there. I quote, "This is the scariest, most terrible night in the entire history of the SMO. Like, there hasn't been anything scarier yet. There will be. Why are you shooting down drones over houses when those drones are flying just fine towards the FSB building? Why are you shooting them down over houses? You shouldn't do that. This is for Odessa, Zaporizhia, Kherson, Kharkiv, Sumy, which you terrorize around the clock, for Kiev and for all other cities of Ukraine. And it will only get worse. It will only get worse. I don't understand what kind of victory the Kremlin is forging in this war. What do they want? You won't even need that scorched Donbas for free. You can't even build roads in your own country. Why on earth did you need a scorched Donbas? Well, while Russia is bombing its own Belgorod, Novosibirsk is preparing to welcome Putin. And how are they preparing? Large-scale improvements have been launched in the center. They are repaving asphalt, repairing sidewalks, and installing new flower beds. But there is one nuance. All this improvement is happening exclusively along Putin's route. I think they'll even put up last year's gas prices along the road there too. And I keep wondering, when will Russia, like North Korea, start lining Russians up along the road so they can wave plastic flowers like this, just like they do for Kim Jong-un in North Korea? If Russians don't take down this monster, this high-heeled Kremlin creature this year, then I have a feeling that next year, at gunpoint, with smiles on their faces, they will be waving those plastic flowers along the road at Putin. And he will be driving by and rejoicing at what a wonderful country he has and how happy the Russians are in it. Well, and you, friends, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones. Subscribe to this channel, don't forget. And let's help our warriors from the favorite Unmanned Systems Battalion of the 107th Brigade. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. Have a peaceful day, everyone, and glory to Ukraine.